All right. Since we're recording this, this is the Let's Talk Buyer Brokerage class, and it's not so much a here's what you must do, it's a discussion about how to change the industry, I think is probably the best way to do it, and how to change the public's perception of what you and they are responsible for in them being represented by you as a buyer. So just a little bit historically, buyer brokerage is where you, as a licensed real estate agent in California, agree to represent a buyer of real estate. And all of the coaches and classes can tell you how you get to work with a buyer. You get to decide how you find a buyer, online, open houses, floor time, you decide. Referrals. But in California, we have the agency law, which has been around for a long time, and you must, and I'm sure everybody learned in Real Estate 100 that there is implied agency as well as explicit agency. Implied agency is when you start talking to somebody and tell them that you will represent them when they say they want to buy something, but you don't have a written agreement to confirm that you will represent them and what your duties are as their representative when they tell you they want to buy something. So going back even farther, before there were listing agreements, people did not have to be licensed in a lot of places around the country, as well as here in California, back in the early 19th century, early 20th century, to get paid to find and put together real estate transactions. Eventually, the California Association of Realtors actually started before the National Association of Realtors. So California's association is older than the national. And in order to keep things together and to be more professional, listing agreements started to come into use. So if I was going to sell my house and I wanted Gabriella to represent me, Gabriella would say, I will only represent you and advertise your property if you sign a contract with me telling me that I'm going to get paid no matter who sells your house. So those agreements, those listing agreements, have evolved over the last more than 100 years. And now we're in the position where buyer representation is going to be the same thing, where signing a contract with a buyer is going to be just as important as signing a contract with a seller. The problem is that the consumer keeps getting told by all of the late night real estate experts that are on reality and other kind of TV that you don't have to sign a contract to be represented to purchase property. You can, real estate agents are a dime a dozen. Anybody will be glad to represent you without a contract. However, there is nothing that's done professionally without a contract. So we are going to change the way real estate is practiced here in the South Bay by having a contract where your buyer is able to understand the level of professionalism that they are going to get is heightened because they do have a signed contract with you as an agent when you represent them to purchase property. So we have, the agents also have an objection to not wanting to sign or present for signature a buyer-broker agreement. And that's because we haven't done it that way. We've always done it that the buyers are pretty open, and it's like the Wild West sometimes, where a buyer walks into an open house, or someone walks into an open house, you assume they're a buyer because they've walked into the open house that you're hosting. They may tell you that they're a buyer, and they're probably just a looky-loo, as we call them, or a neighbor. And until you have a private meeting with them where they get to interview you and you get to interview them, you don't know for sure that they're a buyer. And because we've had this reticence to, oh no, you know, if I make them sign anything, they'll run away. Well, we're the ones who get to decide how we present it. So when you look at the quotes that I've given you about buyer broker representation, I think reading through all of these will help you understand that we here in California are sometimes a little bit backwards, certainly as when you look at Connecticut. In Connecticut, there is a law that you must have a buyer broker agreement before you can start representing a buyer or showing them property. So Connecticut's way ahead of us, where they've said, you know, this makes much more sense. Let's have a description of duties. And that's what it is in our buyer broker agreement. So when you go through the buyer broker representation, you can see the fears and the successes that people have been through in representing buyers and how to make sure that you get them to sign a buyer broker agreement. Let's see. We've had some stories here in South Bay Brokers that people have shared with me. Julianne is one of my prime examples of people who did not have a buyer broker agreement with a couple who she had worked with for more than a year. And they were, I think, kind of casual friends, social acquaintances, casual friends, that she had been showing property to for a year. And all of a sudden one day she got a phone call, and the clients with whom she had no contract, no buyer broker agreement, said, well, they had found a house with another agent and you know, just wanted to let you know we're buying a house. Now, that was the bad story. The good story is, since then, Julianne does a lot of floor time, and she has been very successful. And she has a client that she met during a floor time session with whom she got a buyer broker agreement signed, and it's a couple. One of the couple does not speak English. She found a translator who was able to translate the buyer broker agreement and what, not word for word, but certainly able to, between the wife and the translator, get the understanding of what the buyer broker agreement was. And this guy, I guess, thinks she walks on water because her level of professionalism is way above anybody else that he's dealt with. So that's the good part. You get to look like the person you want to be and the person that people want to deal with. They want to deal with a professional. And I have clients tell me all the time, I'm paying you a lot to do what you do, and I want you to be responsible and tell me everything that I need to do because I'm paying you a lot of money. So, for that amount of money, you'd better be professional.
I had somebody once that I had an appointment with her, and she came over to the office, and I tried to get her to sign the buyer brokerage. And she got all mad about it, and she said, well, I don't want to pin myself down. And then she proceeds to tell me this big long story on how the last property she bought, she had bought it from the 6th realtor who had showed her the same house. She kept going to see the same house, and she kept calling different realtors because she knew that each one didn't want to keep showing her the same house over and over. Then she finally bought it from the 6th one. And I said, that's exactly why I want you to sign this, and I won't take you out unless you sign it. Well, she would send me nasty emails for months until I finally had to just block her email because she was so mad that I was the first person who had ever thrown a monkey wrench in her little plan. So, but I was glad because I didn't want to work with her.
Well, and that's a good example because this prevents you actually from working with flakes.
Yeah, I didn't need that kind of person in my life.
And it gets you to work with the kind of people that are happy to work with a professional who knows what they're doing. So that's a good thing. So, okay, you've got the quotes. The other thing that's real important before we get into the agreement itself is that the Realtor Code of Ethics, Article 16, specifically addresses the issue of representation. And the National Association of Realtors over the last 10 years has revised, they do revise